What if I told you the movie Fight Club is a powerful allegory about LGBTQIA self-discovery? You'd probably think I'm crazy, right? The plot focuses on tearing down economic establishments after government oversight, but another possible interpretation could be the protagonist's acceptance of his sexuality. What is Fight Club? A bunch of men gather around in a small room to beat the hell out of each other. Any man is welcome to join as long as he follows the rules, especially the most important one. Don't talk about Fight Club. Every guy acts differently depending on who is around. Think about all the coded language. Which celebrity do you want to fight? The battling scenes speak for themselves. Or how about the sexual tension between the dynamic duo? Tyler Durden could represent the narrator's sexuality. The protagonist pushes back against himself. His killing of Brad Pitt demonstrates his self-acceptance. This explains Tyler's paranoia about people finding out about him. Edward Norton encapsulates the straight-presenting, closeted gay. He feels empty walking around the office. The narrator has bloodshot eyes from nights of insomnia. Once he joins Fight Club, things change drastically. He finally feels like he has a sense of purpose, but maybe you're still not convinced. Fight Club is based on the original novel by Chuck Palahniuk, who came out as gay in 2004. Much of the imagery in this film mirrors Stonewall. A marginalized group of people lose their safe space from government forces. Despite heavy social pressure, the main character accepts himself. His previous conception of reality crumbles as he finds true self-love. So today, I want to break down the queer subtext and historical value of Fight Club. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe so you always see my latest content. The narrator suffers from insomnia and feelings of emptiness. He works an office job, dressed in standard business attire. Day after day, he pushes through until someone manifests. Initially, we only see him for an instance. But as time goes on, we finally meet Tyler Durden. This smooth-talking soap salesman throws the protagonist for a loop. He's never met anyone like this before. Edward Norton is calculated, whereas Brad Pitt is spontaneous. After losing his apartment, the narrator relies on his newfound friend. Together, they discover the art of physical confrontation. The first engagement is very symbolic. The protagonist is blindsided by fighting, but elated by the feeling. For the first time in his life, he feels like he's alive. Eventually, this hobby becomes an insatiable urge both characters need to fill. Tyler constantly eggs on the narrator. They create a club that's eventually targeted by authorities. Then the audience is taken for a wild ride. When we think we know where the movie's headed, the plot takes a total 180. Come to find out, Tyler Durden is the narrator. In a moment of desperation, the protagonist tries to take his life, but the explosion happened anyway. Let's take this plotline and analyze it through a queer framework. Tyler Durden represents the narrator's repressed feelings. He's angry. He wants to rebel. Social atomization and toxic masculinity have destroyed his sense of self-worth. Our hero seeks validation throughout the film in various shapes or forms. Edward Norton's character has no real social resources. End-of-life seminars are the only place where he feels a true sense of connectedness. After he works through his emotions, a new friend appears. Their characters are opposites, which is why they get along so well. The narrators become accustomed to his heteronormative lifestyle, but Tyler is meant to break the pre-existing framework. Fighting is what gives our hero's life meaning. Without his internal feelings guiding him along, he may have been stuck forever. Brad Pitt unleashes a new set of emotions never understood previously. When our hero learns to let go, he starts enjoying his life. If the narrator is part of the LGBTQIA community, then the ending makes perfect sense. Our hero pushes against an undeniable fate. When he shoots himself, the bomb still goes off because Tyler has accepted his true nature. The ending isn't literal. It's meant to show the deconstruction of his previous worldview. Coming out of the closet is a life-changing experience. Another interesting element to note is that Tyler doesn't physically exist. Edward Norton beating himself up could symbolize the internal struggles of coming out. One of the most important topics covered in Fight Club is toxic masculinity. Men are often assumed to be strong. Real men don't cry. Being effeminate is weak, but all these toxic ideas have reverberating consequences. The narrator can't connect to other people in his life. He's been socialized to never show weakness or sadness. Only in the most depressing environments does he let go. Part of what makes his battle with Tyler so vicious is the preconceived notion he has in his head. Society views fighting as unethical, so the narrator suffers from internalized homophobia. He misdirects on Tyler because he doesn't realize his enemy is society's unfair expectations. Throughout the movie, he becomes more in tune with his feelings. Rather than exist soullessly, he begins to care about his life. Even after his first visit to the cancer meeting, you can see the emotional relief. Crying is good for us. When our hero drops his toxicity, we can see how much his world changes. Instead of relying on himself, he reaches out for help. Only through meeting Tyler and creating Fight Club does he find a sense of peace. So now that we have a bit of understanding of who Tyler Durden is, let's talk about combat. In the film, fighting demonstrates the masculine denial of current workplace culture. Take out our frustrations on those who reside in the system. You're angry your landlord evicted you? Well, let him know about it when you get to Fight Club. What if the film is an LGBTQIA allegory? Then Fight Club might have a different connotation. Earlier, I used the word closeted. Contextualizing the history of persecution is important to better understand the term. Members of the LGBTQIA community have and currently face heavy levels of discrimination. Bigotry permeates society in pernicious ways that targets marginalized groups. Disclosing one's gender identity or sexual preferences in an unsafe environment can have devastating consequences. So many choose to stay in the closet out of self-preservation. Paranoia can be a common occurrence due to the fear of persecution. As a result, these communities primarily hung out in underground venues. Fight Club portrays this idea in an almost one-to-one fashion. The number 1 and 2 rules are the most important. Don't talk about Fight Club. Every person in the film feels suspicion when engaging with one another. They speak in coded language. Two people that have fought multiple times pretend they never met. All these cautious behaviors serve a purpose. The Fight Club host's main goal is to avoid the authorities. Although, so many people feel empty and sad without expressing themselves. When the men are allowed to fight, we can see the changes in their demeanor. Fight Club and Tyler Durden's story become even more powerful once we recognize the real-world equivalent. LGBTQIA culture is important when analyzing media. Without fully understanding our collective history, art doesn't have the same deep meaning. The movie Fight Club is a representation of the Stonewall Uprising. Gay bars were becoming increasingly popular in urbanized areas. Marginalized groups were often mocked or shunned from local establishments. Not to mention, liquor laws deemed bars that served gay people as disorderly. Stonewall offered a safe space, although not without exploitation. The mafia was involved in the bar, which is depicted in the film. While the movie favors Brad Pitt, in reality, LGBTQIA members were taken advantage of. They had to pay high markups for weak alcohol. Not to mention, the bar was notoriously dirty. Rather than create a livable environment, the mafia ran the bar cheap. But the gay community did get one benefit: insulation from the authorities. Unfortunately, the police did a secret raid at Stonewall. All the frustration from societal harassment bubbled over. Cops raiding bars was already a huge problem before Stonewall. Patrons refused eviction and were eventually arrested. The inspiring part of history is what happened next. After the world witnessed these atrocities, protests took shape like never before. The Gay Activist Alliance and other organizations helped preserve culture and spread awareness in an inspiring fashion. One of the first ever Pride parades was hosted a year later. The Stonewall Uprising empowered so many groups of people. Thanks for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. Fight Club is a powerful allegory about finding self-acceptance in the face of adversity. Films that depict historical events have limitless value. Understanding our collective history helps empower those who need our advocacy. LGBTQIA discrimination is still a huge problem today. Many feel heavy social pressure to live a certain way. Movies that showcase the struggle of marginalized groups remind us why we need to keep fighting. What messages did you learn from Fight Club? Do you think this film is a gay allegory? I'd love to hear from you.